All right, so I did the journey last night and I was very tired. So I fell asleep, which is why I'm doing it now. But the journey, I also have rats running around now. Um, yeah, so last night, the thing is about the journey is that you probably want to do it when you're not that tired, because when I'm tired, like I said, if you do any longer than 15 minutes, you do start to get tired. But when you're tired, even 15 minutes, like you might start to doze off. So that's actually what started happening to me last night is I started to sort of fade in and out, but I was able to stay lucid enough to remember my intention. So basically, I decided to try and go down into the lower world by going through a sewer grate near a park that I like to go to. So this is actually a place that I went the other day to do rage therapy in my car. And so I was kind of imagining that space when I went because it has a very powerful energy. So I went over there and went into a sewer grate. It was very dark and damp, and in the other sewer grate I went into, it was more like there was portals, not portals, but like windows that were sort of like portals that you could go through, and you could see like this magical rainforest. But in this sewer grate, it was really dark. It was like I could see some type of foliage in there, but it was really kind of creepy, and I didn't feel comfortable. And I was like, oh, am I like supposed to like do this journey like in there? I was like, I don't want to be in here, you know. And then I started to feel like I was really cold, and I realized that this whole room was like a mirror. So I was like lying on my back, and I felt like I was floating in like a pool of ice, like a very cold, frozen lake. So I kind of floated up, and I was lying on my back, and then I was immersed into this lake, this very cold lake. And so I swam pretty fast towards the shore. I sort of turned into a dolphin at some point to just swim faster. And then I arrived on this island, which is a place that I visit a lot in the journeys. And again, I didn't intend to do this. This just naturally happened. So there's this tropical island that is a safe place for me to do, Danny. There's a safe place for me to sort of talk to myself. So whenever I do inner child stuff or sort of need to talk to myself, I always end up convening on this beach right by this lake. So it's super easy to get to, and it's quick to get there. So I met up with these different like versions of myself, and each sort of archetype emerged, and it was pretty clear which ones were which. I mean, none of them looked like drastically different. We were all wearing the same thing. We all looked the same. There wasn't anything, you know, dramatic, or, you know, they weren't in costumes or anything. It's just that their sort of vibe was different. So like I could tell which one was the warrior, because the warrior felt very confident, and the warrior was holding a spear. So I guess they were a little bit of a caricature. But the analyst, I could tell, was really like depressed and neurotic and just kind of disheveled. So I could tell which one that was. And then the lover was wearing like a kind of like a robe. I mean, it was just me, but they were just a little more like loving and hippie-ish, I guess. And then the inner child was actually much younger than I normally see her. So this child was like maybe 5. Usually I talk to my inner child when she's like at least 8, but mostly around like 11 or so. So this one was like really young. So that was different for me. And then the neutral observer was just more groovy, more calm. Like I could tell they were just more zen. So it was like these energies were distinct, but they were all me. And then I still had that ruby in my hand, you know. So I held it out. I was like, hey, I'm all kind of happy to see you guys. So like when you're in the journey, there may or may not be actual talking. I obviously talk a lot to myself, so I'm used to talking, but a lot of it is just implied when you're in a journey. You don't really need to say anything. You just kind of, you know, you're talking to yourself or your imagination. These are all different things in your consciousness. So you can project like in and out, and you can speak like telepathically or through symbols or gestures or things. I did speak some words, and I just said like, thank you guys for coming. Like we're all working together, like just kind of do some team building, like camaraderie for all these different energies of myself. And then I held out my soul, and I was like, we all have these different roles to protect us. And then I was like, we need to all work together, whatever. And then the analyst was just like, well, why? Like, why are we, what is the purpose? What are we all working towards? Of course, the analyst is the energy that is questioning everything. They're an investigator. They're the ones trying to solve all the problems. So I was like, that's a good point, actually. And I was like, we all have different roles. Like, your role the analyst's role is to seek knowledge. That is their only role. So that's what they do. That's their only purpose. And then the warrior's role is to fight, protect, and defend and have boundaries. The lover's role is to love and care for the self and others. And the neutral observer's role is to bring neutrality to the situation. And then I was like, what is the inner child's role? And then the inner child was playing like on the ground, like making some sandcastles on the beach. And I was like, the inner child's role is to play. That's what the inner child's role is. And so I was like, and then that was a good insight for me, because I was like, why are we doing all these things? Why do we need all these boundaries? Why do we need this love? Why do we need the neutrality? Why do we need to have knowledge? Why do we need all these things? What is this purpose? And then I was like, oh, so that we can play, like life is a game, so we're playing, and we can have all these energies working together so that the inner child can safely and securely play and explore, which is obviously we do that in adulthood, but we need these other energies in sync with each other and in healthy amounts. So I was like, that's a really good insight. So as you can see, that's an example of sort of an insight that you can have doing this. And then I had another insight, because I was visualizing these different energies in this altered state of consciousness, and I saw that they all were like pretty confident. I mean, I could tell the lover energy was definitely very soft, very sensitive, very gentle. And so I said to the warrior, like, you really need to stick close to the lover energy. Like, you really need to protect her, because she's very vulnerable. She's very, very sensitive and soft. Like, you really need to protect her. So I sort of like paired those two up. And then I looked at the analyst, and the analyst energy was just really, really frazzled. And so that was sort of a big insight to me as well, because I've obviously been conceptualizing my heart and love and the lover energy, my brokenness through that lens. But the way my teacher sort of described it is it's the analyst that's really out of control, because it's the analyst is our, the ego sort of need to control everything, label everything, define everything, solve every problem. And he was like, the analysts, they don't understand love. They can only think in logic. They're trying to strategize. They're constantly projecting the past onto the future to try and predict an outcome. It doesn't understand love. And it seems very true to me in my experience, that I've literally just like thought myself into corners, because I'm just like, what is love? Like, I literally can't understand it. It's really freaking me out. And like, I've suffered a lot trying to like rationally understand, like, what is love? Like, what is unhealthy love? Like, all these different things, whereas like the lover energy just naturally loves and receives love. And they can get hurt. That's why you need like the warrior energy. So I was like, that gave me really good insight, because I was like, the analyst energy is the one who's depressed. The analyst energy, the lover, there's two different things, right? Two different types of pain. There's the lover energy, which is actually hurt. The lover is hurt. They feel everything really deeply. So they're very sensitive. They feel actual pain. So that's when actually like the heartache comes in, the longing, the sadness, the crying, the grief. But the analyst is the one who's depressed. The analyst is the one trying to like solve all these like inconceivable problems and the past, and like just, they're the neurotic one who's super cynical, and they can get really irrational, And so the analyst is the one who's actually depressed and anxious, not the lover. The lover energy is not ever depressed and anxious, which makes it really confusing for the analyst when the analyst is listening like too much to past hurts of the lover energy and then projecting it onto the future, because the lover's just like, well, I just need to love, like all I want to do is love people, like I just want to be loved, I love people now, like, and it's super painful. And then the analyst is just like, oh my God, like just I need to solve all these problems, I need to like make sure you don't get hurt again and also find love. And it's just like the analyst is burnt the fuck out. So that kind of clued me in, like I really need to be aware of that mechanism, because you know, my least favorite thing is when people tell me that I think too much, because fuck you. Just because I'm intelligent and have intellectual overexcitability, like don't tell me not to think too much, okay? Because that's when predators happen and stuff like that. But don't tell me that I'm overthinking. Don't tell me not to think about it. Don't fucking say anything about the way I think. But the problem is that, you know, thoughtfulness is probably my best quality, the fact that I am so considerate of all these different ideas and possibilities. And like my analyst energy is really good. It's just the problem is that they're overworked and there hasn't been enough boundaries, there hasn't been enough love, there hasn't been enough play, and there hasn't been enough neutrality. The neutrality is when you have non-judgment and you just accept things and you're not trying to strategize and come up with a solution and like fix everything and solve everything. So I was like, I really prize the analyst. So I said to the analyst, like, you know, you have done such an amazing job, but like, you deserve a break. You know, I'm going to pair you up with the neutral observer. And I said to the neutral observer, who's just this like very chill Laura, I was like, can you just make sure to watch this analyst? Like, we need to really strengthen your energy so that we can give the analyst a break, because the analyst is crucial. The prefrontal cortex and everything is crucial. You can conceptualize it like that. But we have to make sure that when we're in a fight or flight mode and when we're overcome by fear, when the analyst is afraid and projecting past fear situations into the present or future, they're not actually using rational judgment. It's not going to be good. So there is a difference between thoughtful contemplation and like really, you know, in flow state analysis, and then rumination, destructive rumination, where it's exhausting, depressing, cynical. You're just going in circles. You're not really coming up with new ideas. It's just like really black and white trauma thinking, you know? So there is a difference. So those are all like really important insights that I had just in like a couple minutes, you know? And then I did start to like fade in and out because I was like kind of falling asleep. And then I just managed to like return, and I was like, honestly, like this was a good meeting, you guys. Like we can all work together. I'll try to like give you all your each due respect. I held the ruby and I said, let's all like touch this. I made sure each energy held it just to sort of, I don't know, have sort of a wholeness in my soul. And then I was like, honestly, that's it. So like sometimes in a journey, you really are doing some intense work and you just keep going and going and you lose track of time. And then when the shaman changes the drum rhythm, you're like, oh, I have to go back already. For this one, it was a more straightforward journey. It wasn't really a complicated question. I did exactly what I wanted to do. I just wanted these energies to meet, have a discussion of their roles, and just sort of have more awareness of them. So I actually went back just a little early because really that's all I really wanted to do in this case. And then when the drum rhythm changed, I went back through the lake, and then I floated back up through that sort of weird, almost like sensory deprivation room. And then I went back into the sewer, and I went back up through the sewer grate. So that was the journey that I had. And then I went to sleep because I was very tired and I was falling asleep already. So you can see that's just one example of a journey that you can use, you know, if you want to use it in spiritual ways, there's so many ways you can do that. Like I said, I mean, I didn't know that like Horus was going to come around in the last one, or like these different creatures or whatever. Like there was a lot of different animals and stuff that helped me in the soul journey. But you can also use these journeys just to do like more sort of detached or kind of out of body experiences to gain perspective and introspection, and do inner child work, and like just do healing work. I mean, the first journey I did was an inner child journey that was really intense, and it was a shamanic extraction where you end up extracting like severe trauma. And apparently that's like a huge thing. I had no idea. And it was the very first journey that I ever did with the shaman. And I did this like insanely intense like extraction where I pulled out like, where I said to my inner child, I'm tired of you being in pain. And I pulled out these yards and yards of heavy chains from my heart. And they were chains full of blood, flesh dripping off. There were spikes, torture instruments, knives, like rusty daggers, nails, like just all of these spikes and horrible like carnage that was being ripped up. And at the very end of the chain was this huge ball that had like been keeping it all in there. And I just pulled it all out and I threw it dripping blood and flesh into the garbage. And then I said to my inner child, like, you still obviously have some severe wounds. Is going to be really painful. There's going to be scars. There might be infections that you need to heal these wounds. But those weapons are out. All right? Those past knives are out of there. So, and that was the very first journey that I ever did. So, right, I'm very, like, prepared, to do this type of thing. But I highly, highly recommend that anyone can give it a try. It's not hard. It's not physically demanding. I mean, if you wanted to, you can even journey in your bed. The only reason that I didn't was because you're more likely to fall asleep. And some people actually fall asleep to journeying, which is totally fine. I mean, again, it's a form of meditation. I try to use it for a more specific tool of self-reflection, and I don't want to fall asleep during it. But, you can even just journey in your bed. You can journey just sitting in a chair. You can even journey moving around. It's called a movement journey. Just like close your eyes, listen to the drums, move around, like do the same thing, have an intention. Norm, don't eat crumbs in my bed. And you can even do it moving around. Like I said, you can do it through dance, just any sort of altered transcendent state. I wouldn't recommend trying to do it while you're driving or in traffic or, in a public area. This isn't the type of meditation that you might want to like try to practice your meditation skills by being in a sort of a crowded area or something. Because you're listening to drumming too. And you sort of do get into a different state. But, as you can see, it's very easy. You can incorporate a lot of other spiritual or meditational or healing or therapeutic or religious practices into whatever you do. So I hope that gives you guys like a good idea of what I sort of do for hobbies. Now that I'm sober and I'm not doing any other things, I, do these other states of consciousness. They can be psychedelic too. And, but you're sober, and at any time you can come back. Sometimes you get really deep into it. Sometimes it's harder to get into it. And it takes a lot of people a couple times, but it's best, to sort of maybe do a guided one as well. You can do a guided, a shamanic meditation. You can find those. I already learned how to do it from a real shaman in person. So that's why I kind of don't need that. But, yeah, I hope I've given like good advice, and I'll make more videos about this later. But that's just one journey that I had. Just sort of, it went well. So I'm happy with it. Yeah. Soul, got all my pieces working together. So yeah.